Howdy, MR.EDOGAWA'S. My name's L.A.zy, and welcome back, surprisingly, to Persona 4 Gold. Now, you're probably asking, what the hell am I doing back to this game as well? You see, as soon as I finished the main story, I checked out a little bit of the extras, and I found out there are quite a few little interesting things in there. Basically, as you can see here, you can you can start a new game as well, and you can also check cutscenes, you can also listen to the music, but there are also background information about all the personas, and there's like the midnight quiz as well. The midnight quiz, as far as I understood, is basically asking you for all the, like, how much do you remember the game, like everything that's happened in the game. So that's pretty interesting, like, to see, and I wanted to like dedicate a couple of extra videos to these extras. So for this video, if we can get through all of it, I want to see what Edogawa has to say, like, about all of the concept of like personas and shadows. So let's get started. This is gonna be a murder on my throat, by the way.
Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom.
Alright, let's see what you got to say. Hello there, everyone. It's time for Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom. This lecture is for those distinguished enough to tune in. I'm your lecturer, Mr. Edogawa of the Gekugan High. You might be surprised to know that my day job is as a school nurse. Usually the students ask me about their health, but sometimes I get questions like this. Mr. Edogawa, what are personas and shadows? Apparently I have them inside me. It was a quick shock to learn that there are students that diligent out there. After all, not many children will come to me asking about personas and shadows from Jungian psychology, Carl Jung. I originally thought that Jung was maybe a Japanese or like a Chinese philosopher at first, but apparently he's actually from Europe. So, thanks to Carl Jung, the entirety of the Persona series is pretty much existing. So, thank him posthumously because he's long dead. It was due to those such requests that I decided to start the show, Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom. This lecture will cover Jungian psychology, so you too can learn about personas and shadows, and much more besides. I call it Everyone Loves Jungian Psychology. Let us study the science of the human mind that Dr. Jung built. Today's lesson is the first installment, War Shadows and Personas. Alright then, let's get started. Palas aron azinomas. Now, I mentioned this already, but persona and shadow are terms used in Jungian psychology. These terms are used to describe the workings of the human mind. But what exactly are personas and shadows? Another you lurking in your mind. According to Jung, there are other yous inside yourself. Let's start with the persona. It is the other you that comes out when you interact with others. Think about it. When you talk to someone, is that the real you? Or was it the you that the person you were talking to was expecting? Or the you that you want people to see? Okay, that's getting pretty deep. Either of those yous are a persona. Again, sorry about that. Personas are like masks. They connect you to the outside world by acting as the medium through which you present yourself. That sounds like a helpful other you, doesn't it? Personas are there when you need them. But shadows, though, they are the other you that you'll reject. A good way to think about them is the you that you don't want to be and don't think of yourself as. Shadows are just that, shadows. They're the side of you that you keep locked away in your mind as evil. Sounds like a scary other you, huh? It appears that you need to handle shadows with care. Now, personas and shadows are both other yous that you usually aren't aware of. So then, why aren't you aware of them? It's because they lurk deep inside your mind, in your unconscious. The unconscious is the source of personas and shadows, and the foundation of Jungian psychology. It's important to understand, so let's take a closer look at this unconscious. The unconscious of Jungian psychology. The term was originally derived from psychology. It may be hard for you to imagine, since the word is now used in everyday conversation. There is a domain in all of our minds that we're typically unaware of. This is known as the unconscious. And the unconscious is the source of the mind's activity. So you, and yes, even you, all have an unconscious deep within your mind, separate from the conscious mind that you're aware of. The unconscious is said to be much bigger than the conscious mind too, like the part of an iceberg that's underwater. You could say that Jungian psychology began by elucidating this vast unconscious. Are you all listening? Are you still conscious? The unconscious, hidden deep within inside your mind, it is in the realm that you cannot explore that the power to change yourself lies. This power are the same other yous inside your mind the personas and shadows that I was just talking about. The other yous live in the unconscious, lying in wait for the chance to make it out to the conscious mind. Who are they really? How you should go about handling them? These are the concepts I'll be introducing you to. Make sure to tune in. The collective unconscious, man is connected, surpassing time and place. So far, we've covered the existence of the unconscious inside your mind, as well as the other yous known as personas and shadows, which live there. Now let me add one thing to that, an important secret about the unconscious. This gets to the heart of the truth about your mind, about the truth about the world. The unconscious within your mind is actually not just yours. Human minds are all connected, transcending space and time. In other words, man's unconscious is shared. Did I forget to mention that this show will involve viewer participation every so often? When you see a selection on the screen, use the buttons in front of you to make your choice. Now that I've explained, man's unconscious is shared. That's amazing. Reacting to the otherworldly with pure surprise. I said you were made for the world of the occult. So, is man's unconscious really shared? Have you ever noticed that no matter what the era or the location, man tends to have certain sensitivities? Based on thorough painstaking research, Jung suggested that man's unconscious is indeed shared. If Jung was alive today, he might say something like, that human mind is an isolated terminal, it's networked, and that network is known as the collective unconscious. The original German phrase is Kollektivs Unbewusstes, in case you were curious. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. The archetypes that become the other you. Now the other yous, the personas and shadows, to tell you the truth, they are deeply tied to this collective unconscious. I'll explain this term more later, but they are archetypes, images born from the collective unconscious. It's starting to become quite a handful, isn't it? Collective unconscious. What? Archimajig? Speak English, you egghead. I hear the screams from your heart. But by the time my lectures come to a close, you'll no doubt be saying, that was so collectively unconscious. Let's review a little, shall we? Use the buttons in front of you to answer. Are you ready? Alright, I ask thee. The hidden you within your mind. What is the part of the mind where it dwells called? The unconscious. Very good. You passed that with ease. Now, what's the most basic level of these lessons? Let's keep going deeper in our understanding of the mind. Oh, that's it? Okay then. Now then, it looks like our time is up. Next time, we'll dig a little deeper into the unconscious we talked about today. That's it for today. Alright, this is interesting stuff. Before I got into the Persona series, after finishing Persona 5 Royal and started looking up, most of majority of it, not just Persona, but the Shin Megami Tensei series, the Digital Devil Survival, they're all rooted in Carl Jung's philosophy works, and apparently this just further shows how the Carl Jung philosophy is intertwined with the Persona series, which is actually very interesting. We have a lot of lectures to go, so let's see what he's got to tell us next.
Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom.
It's just there, lesson 2. Hello there, everyone. It's time for Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom. Everyone loves Jungian psychology. An invitation to the you that you don't know. Is installment number 2. The unconscious is just there. Do you remember the last lecture? You're not already just glossing over it, are you? Now let's begin the class. Cyrus, Etar, Bezanar, Jung the psychiatrist. You heard me say Jung this and Jung that, but thinking back on it, I never explained who Jung is, did I? So this time I'll give you some biographical details throughout the lesson. Carl Jung was born in Switzerland in 1875. By the turn of the century, he had begun his career as a psychiatrist. He became a doctor who counseled people with mental illnesses. At the time, psychiatry was still in the very early stages of development, but there was one effective method of treatment known at the time. That method was hypnosis. The unconscious found by hypnosis. Through the use of hypnosis, Jung and his fellow doctors were able to treat their patients' mental illnesses. While under hypnosis, the patients displayed sides of themselves that had never been seen, as well as alternate personalities. So where did these hidden sides and other personalities come from? That became the question du jour. Where are they hiding, essentially? If man could be aware of all these aspects of his mind, there should be nowhere to hide, but as it happened, there was. The conclusion that the psychiatrist came to was that there existed an area of the mind that people are not aware of. That is, of course, the unconscious, the opposite of the conscious. And that is how doctors like Jung first discovered the existence of the unconscious in those days. I'm sure many of you know, but the one who contributed to most of the discovery of the unconscious was Sigmund Freud. Freud could be considered Jung's mentor, but unfortunately, we don't have much time in these lessons to discuss their relationship. The unconscious was discovered by a group of extraordinary men. For now, just remember that fact. Now, let me ask you, when you think of the unconscious, how do you feel? It's kind of scary when you put like every single one of those details into one cohesive thought. It is kind of scary. Perhaps fear is a natural reaction. That which is beyond our own comprehension is always scary. It's like that in general. But perhaps your feeling about the unconscious will change after these lectures. Proof of unconscious. If you tell me it's there, I feel vaguely like it is. But in daily life, it's hard to believe because you can't sense it. However, Jung and the others claim that you can detect the unconscious in your daily life even without hypnosis. One way is through slips. Clinically known as parapraxis, things like a slip of the tongue or forgetting to do things fall into this category. You've been in situations where you accidentally call someone such as your teacher mommy, right? What you meant to say was Miss Saeko but something else slipped out. The unconscious is closer than you thought. Another way to detect the unconscious is in dreams. That's easy to see, you know? Typically, one dreams of things that are not possible in the real world. You may have surprised yourself before with dreams of things you never experienced, haven't you? The real were beyond your imagination, weren't they? Something your unconscious mind could never come up with. Yes, dreams are quite close to the unconscious. Dreams are an important subject of study in Jungian psychology. We'll go over that in another lecture. Mental illness, the unconscious going wild. As a psychiatrist, Jung considered the unconscious to be a big problem. Why? Because he considered it to be the cause of mental illnesses. This is how he saw things. In a healthy mind, the conscious was in control, reigning in the unconscious. For his mentally ill patients, the unconscious broke free of its reins and ran amok. Is the unconscious evil? Hearing it that way, you might think the unconscious is a bad thing, but that's not quite how Jung saw it. An uncontrolled unconscious taking over is the bad thing, yes, but the unconscious itself is not innately bad. What led him to say this, you might ask? His observations as a psychiatrist led him to realize that the cause of mental illness was actually on the conscious side. When you suppress your emotions too tightly, or work too hard, or stress yourself to your limit, the unconscious makes its move. Essentially, when the conscious mind becomes overtaxed and unbalanced, the unconscious mind comes out as if to stop it. The unconscious compensates for the conscious when the latter overextends itself. Seen this way, the unconscious definitely seems like something you want to have. By the way, Edo's eyes are kind of like a little bit creepy. They're almost vacant in a way, or rather he's sleeping, who knows. Its role is to balance the mind, the ego within the conscious. Now then, so far we have learned to view the mind as divided into conscious and unconscious halves. Now let's talk about you. The you of your conscious mind is referred to Jungian psychology as the ego. This too is now a common term, which makes things complicated. But for purposes of this lecture, when I say ego, it will carry the Jungian meaning. The ego is the center of the conscious and in most respects is the mind, but is only you in the conscious sense. The domain of the ego does not extend to the unconscious. This will be a key point later in our studies of Jungian psychology. So, let me ask you again. You think of the unconscious, how do you feel? Don't feel anything. Mad respect. Mad respect. There's the answer I was looking for. Good, it seems you understand. You can't understand the mind's true form without knowing and respecting the unconscious. The ego within the conscious. Essentially, we are residents of the conscious, so our thinking is biased toward it. We take our conceited view that we are the masters of our own minds, when in truth, the mind is nothing but a tiny conscious working on the support of the unconscious's massive energies. Forget that, I'm sure you see now. Ooh, that's the end of that. Well then, our time is up. Next time I'll cover the amazing disposition of the mind as advocated by Jung. So ends today's lesson. This is pretty interesting stuff. Interesting. Like, all the minds are intertwined and there's like, two different times of consciousness inside you. The unconscious and the normal conscious. And the unconscious comes out whenever you overtax or overdo like things and cause yourself to stress out or getting mental breakdowns and all that. This is pretty interesting stuff, not gonna lie. Alright, we still got a lot to go through, so let's do this. Next one.
Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom.
Everyone loves Jungian psychology. Hello there, everyone. It's time for Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom. Everyone loves Jungian psychology, an invitation to the you that you don't know. We're already on our third installment, the unconscious, beyond space and time. Are you getting everything so far? You're not fast forwarding through my lectures, are you? Let's begin the lecture. Progredo ado rucem shirerem. Going deeper into the unconscious. This time it will dig deeper into the unconscious. Last time I explained the existence of the unconscious, but to exist implies that there is a process through which it is created. Today's lesson will follow this process behind the creation of the unconscious. By doing so, we will close in on the shocking core of Jungian psychology. The first unconscious, me individually. I'm sure this is obvious, but when we enter this world and we do not have an actual mind, our minds are underdeveloped at birth. As a child grows, his mind develops, and his unconscious forms. It's easy to understand that the growth of the body and the growth of the mind are connected, right? But how exactly is the unconscious created? From the moment the unconscious was acknowledged to exist, it was believed to come from personal experiences. It doesn't come from nowhere. The unconscious is created through what a person experiences as he lives his life. In a sense, it's a natural idea. As you build experience, you accumulate knowledge and emotions. In other words, memories and recollections. It was thought that the mental energy from these memories gathered in a realm outside of the conscious, creating the unconscious. Do you get that? Let me explain in simpler terms. As people live their lives, they experience many things, but it's not like they remember everything that happened to them. There are memories you want to keep, but sometimes too much time passes. There are old memories and abandoned memories that you actively want to forget. To put it visually, the corpses of these memories pile up, forming the soil known as the unconscious, or something like that. At any rate, memories that fall or are pushed out of the conscious form the unconscious. That's the common theory. Regarding these abandoned memories that I mentioned just now, in psychology, this mechanism is called suppression. It's a central subject of Freudian psychoanalysis. Let me give you a brief introduction. Second unconscious, where does it come from? Jung himself also believed that the unconscious was built from a person's experiences, but as he observed his patients, he encountered an unconscious that could not be explained via personal experience. Scenery that people have never seen, creatures that don't exist, even that events that never happened. Patients spoke of experiences they didn't have. You couldn't just file them under nonsense or reconstructed memory, so he thought about why things like this happened. Then you realized something when you found that one patient's delusion was similar to an uncommon foreign myth. Man's unconscious is shared. It was a groundbreaking thought, and Jung continued to test his theory. He saw several other cases in which the patient's delusions were similar to myths and legends. The existence of similar myths among regions that could never have met also points to this shared unconscious. With this proof, Jung advocated his theory of the collective unconscious. Jungian structure of the mind. Let's take a look at the structure of the mind, split between the conscious and the unconscious. Alright, conscious, personal unconscious, collective unconscious. Way deep below the scale. We've already learned that the mind is made out of conscious, which sticks out, and the giant hidden unconscious. The unconscious is separated into the part that is created by that person's singular life, and the part that is shared. This middle part here is the personal unconscious, formed by the individual's personal experiences. And, at the very bottom, is the collective unconscious, the part shared between all people. We just talked about that. The minds of all people living everywhere are shared. It's a very strange thought, this collective unconscious, but it is the foundation of the mind, with you since birth. Because everyone's mind develops from the same foundation, this collective unconscious appeared to be shared. Okay, everybody leaning on the fast forward button, time to slow down. Hit play. This is the important quiz. I'm not sure how someone who skipped the lesson can expect to answer, but we'll see. Are you ready? Alright, I'll ask thee. Jung believed the mind was made up of collective unconscious, the personal unconscious, and the conscious. A. Collective unconscious. B. Personal unconscious. C. Conscious. Put them in order, deepest to highest. From deepest to highest, okay? Alright, A, B, and C. from deepest to highest. Okay, that was correct. Multiple choice quizzes sure make problems easy, don't they? If you can just get the order of the unconsciousness right, you'll be able to get by in life. Now then, it looks like our time here is over. In this lesson, you learned about the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. In the next lesson, by looking at the collective unconscious as the foundation for the mind, we'll study something within our own minds. And that's it for the day. So, the unconscious formed by suppressing memories and whatever you experienced through your life, also kind of interesting, but damn. Imagine this concept actually existed in real life, people's collective unconsciousness forming other worlds, mental dimensions and all that. That would be so insane to think about. Archetypes, the structure of the psyche, 4th of 10 lectures. Alright? What do you got next to say?
Mr. Edogawa's TV Classroom.
Lesson 4. Hello there, everyone. It's time for Mr. Edogawa's TV Classroom. Everyone loves Jungian psychology, an invitation to the you that you don't know. Avoiding the eyes of the underground world order, here comes our 4th installment. Archetypes, the structure of the psyche. Huh? You want to know more about that world order I just mentioned? I'll tell you about it later. Let's begin the lecture. Namakasagar Baya Arika Mari Muri Svaha. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What is in the collective unconscious? For the past couple of lessons, I've pestered you with explanations of the unconscious, so I think that I've at least succeeded in snapping you out of the delusion that you're the ruler of your own mind. Today will further our knowledge, so let's focus our studies on the unconscious, particularly the collective unconscious. The ability to recognize the collective unconscious. In our minds, we have the conscious and the unconscious. You probably see the unconscious as a deep ocean, a lonely place with nothing around. But Jung actually thought of it as a place filled with mind energy that can jolt your emotions. Why do you think this? It's because he discovered a special property held by the collective unconscious. Already studied that the collective unconscious is shared by mankind, that had been there since birth. So in the deepest part of the collective unconscious lies the beginning of the mind, created at birth. Now then, what's in there? The beginning of the mind is the basic elements needed when the mind develops. The power of the mind, the ability to recognize patterns. Jung called these elements archetypes. What allows for this basic ability of the collective unconscious to recognize patterns is archetypes. Alright, collective unconscious, archetype falls into collective unconscious. Jung says the collective unconscious is made up of archetypes. In other words, archetypes form the collective unconscious. There are, in theory, limitless archetypes, and Jung names some of them. Let's take a look at the example archetypes. What are archetypes? I told you earlier that Jung found the collective unconscious by finding a pattern in myths and old tales, right? That pattern itself is the classic example of an archetype. For example, in most ancient religions, there is a mother goddess that is worshipped. There have been even statues and pictures of mother goddesses found in ancient ruins. Man has felt this motherly image since ancient times, as an archetype that has been created in our minds. Now then, about that image of the mother, what function does this hold as the foundation of the mind's power to recognize patterns? Try this out. Think of the concept of a mother inside your mind. You think of the power to give birth, the power of love, to hold someone dearly, right? This archetype that creates this motherly image is known as the Great Mother. Of the infinite archetypes, it is one of the more important ones. Interesting, isn't it? Huh? You're still wondering about that world order? You'll just have to suck it up this lecture. Next, I'll do a quick explanation of some other archetypes. About archetypes. The wise old man incurs the image of an old man, with the properties of knowledgeable, teacher, mentor. Then there's the shadow, which I've mentioned before. This is also an archetype. The shadow archetype is a dark figure and represents the properties of the hated, things you don't want to have or be. Just like shadows, we have personas, coming from the word for mask. This again is an archetype. From the imagery of hiding one's own face, its property is your role in society. And one unique group of archetypes include the female anima and male animus images are found only in males and females, respectively, and depend on gender. I'm only giving a few examples, but as you can see, archetypes are incredibly rich in variety. Boy, today's lesson was a doozy, wasn't it? Are all my lessons like this? Maybe so. Well, I'll make your quiz easy at the very least. Get your buttons ready. Are you ready? Alright? I ask thee, what functions do archetypes have within the mind? The power to recognize. Good one. That's what I was talking about all this time. Archetypes are the center of Jungian psychology. The idea of the archetype is the central theory to Jungian psychology. I'm not going to ask you to master the details, but I hope you can get the basics down. Starting next time, I'm going to go into in-depth descriptions of some of these archetypes. Jung and mythology. Some of you may have noticed by now, but I've mentioned ties of the mind to mythology several times. In order to explain Jung's theories, many myths and analysis of them are brought up. You can say that mythology is the key point in Jungian psychology. I think the general opinion of mythology is folklore based off history, with a lot of fantasy thrown in. But it seems that Jung sees myths as stories that are reflected and born from the minds of people. To oversimplify it, gods and demons were created by the human mind. The personas that we summon like each and every day that we fuse into. It's a hard idea for a religious minded people to swallow, but that was the central idea. Well, and that was the end of that lecture. Now then, it looks like our time here is up. That's it for today. These are pretty interesting lectures, not gonna lie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 more to go. Nature of the Shadow. The 5 to 10 lectures explain the basics of Jungian psychology, central theme of Persona series. Even this acknowledges that it's like a central theme.
MR.EDOGAWA'S TV classroom.
Alright, lesson 5. Hello there everyone, it's time for MR.EDOGAWA'S TV classroom. Everyone loves Jungian psychology, an invitation to the you that you don't know. It's already our 5th installment, the nature of the shadow. Alright, shady guy, the shadow archetype. People are often more attracted to a person with a shady personality than to an outright good person. For today's lesson, I want to pick a single archetype and discuss it. That archetype is the shadow. Why the charmer, Now let's begin the lecture. So the Ed Quagula. The shadow, a creepy guy. Just to brush up from the previous lecture, an archetype is a basic element of pattern recognition within the mind. With that ability, the mind can create images. There are archetypes such as the Great Mother and the Wise Old Man. The shadow archetype conjures the image of a creepy, unfamiliar person. Creepy, unfamiliar person. That doesn't exactly sound like something that gives off good vibes, does it? That's right, the shadow is the archetype that represents the undesirable. The shadow is personal evil. Jung explained that shadow is as the part of the personality one chooses not to see. In other words, the evil within the person that he or she denies. We all have evil that we deny buried within our unconscious, that is the shadow. I'm sure you can all understand that the shadow is hated by all, but let me explain it a little more, comparing it to your everyday life. Alright, then say you're a student and you've received a large amount of homework when you're thinking of going out. In that situation, which do you choose, work or play? Work as usual. I see. In other words, to you, good is having the diligence to do your homework. On the other hand, you abhor the laxness of going out to play. Laziness is your evil. That is, you do not want to become the lazy guy you hate. Even though you weren't lazy, you chose not to be. This imaginary lazy person that you don't want to be is part of the representation of your shadow. Oh, just to let you know, I meant this question is hypothetical. I'm not going to draw any conscious conclusions about your shadow. But you see, this question has shown how you use your shadow as the standard for interpreting your own good and evil. But there's another deeper meaning to this. Shadow is the you that wasn't picked. I gave you 2 choices just now, work or play. You picked one of them, and consequently you didn't pick the other. However, it's not impossible you might have picked it. The other path was certainly a possible choice. Your shadow is the path that you didn't take. In other words, it is another you. The shadow is the you that wasn't picked. What to do with the hated shadow? Inside your mind is a creepy, unfamiliar person. It represents things you don't wish to be, things that you hate. The hated shadow is under pressure by the conscious, often using the feeling that it should just disappear. But can one's shadow truly be erased? First off, it will be very difficult considering its location inside the unconscious. Furthermore, the shadow makes us recognize ourselves and give our value judgments more meaning. To erase one's shadows to weaken one's own mind. Jung realized this and advised against trying to eliminate your shadow, in favor of facing it and accepting it. By accepting one's shadow, a person's mind can grow further. If you accept this mental image as another version of you, maybe it'll be easier to face your shadow, Oh, just like in the games that we did multiple times. Now then, looks like it's time. I'll explain a bit about the shadow of the people, a group psyche as opposed to an individual, at the end of this lesson. Jung's studies of the mythology noted the existence of the shadow. The shadows of myth, they are evil beings known better as demons. From the viewpoint of Jungian psychology, the common shadow of the people took on the forms of demons. You have to be an exorcist to want to rid of the world of demons. But after this lecture, is it a good thing to eradicate demons? Makes you think, doesn't it? Follow my schedule, the next lecture should be on the persona. That is also another version of yourself. And that's it for today. These lectures are very interesting. Gives like a bigger insight on what the personas are and what they represent in most of the people. Personas and sociability, the truth about complexes, psychological types of beginners, deeper into Jungian psychology. Alright then. Alright then. Personas and sociability. Let's see. Alright.
Mr. Edogawa's TV classroom.
Personas and sociability level 6. Lesson 6. Alright, let's skip this. This will be our 6th lecture. We're at the halfway point. Today's title is Personas and Sociability. What kind of guy is this archetype? The persona. Deep within our minds lies the collective unconscious shared by all mankind. It is made of the basic archetypes. I want to introduce another of these archetypes to you in this lesson. Last time we discussed the shadow. This time is the persona. The title kind of gave it away, didn't it? Now let's begin the lesson. Abracadabra, alakazam. Okay, those words are understandable. Persona, the mask. Not so common word for persona. Persona comes from the Latin word for mask. Of course, in this day and age, I doubt there are many people who actually use a mask in their day-to-day lives. They're mostly seen as works of art, used as interior decor, and parts of costumes, of course. That's about it. In order to understand this persona archetype, first need to grasp the idea of how masks were first used. Masks were commonly used in plays, festivals, and religious ceremonies. They were all used to play roles. The persona archetype's name comes from this role-playing aspect. Jung found an archetype that played roles and named it the persona. Masks were always used as costumes. I guess the ones that has remained throughout the ages. Now, thinking carefully, what exactly is this ability to play a role that the mind has had since birth? Let's think about it. An actor wearing a mask plays his role in order to play to progress. So in the case of a non-actor, someone playing a role will progress. And here comes a question. Alright, I ask thee. What exactly progresses when a person plays a role in everyday life? Society? Society, huh? That's something of an all-encompassing answer, don't you think? But it's also correct. Not bad. I kinda thought I was wrong there. When a person plays a role in life, society moves forward. Society exists because people don't do what they please. Instead, they split roles among themselves. In other words, there are people enacting roles on the world stage. We play the parts of ourselves to make up society. This ability to play a role in society is the persona archetype. Interesting. Persona is a mask your ego wears to place a role in social interaction. It is a mediator between you and others. The human mind is not a standalone piece, but exists as part of a network. I spoke before about how human minds are linked through the collective unconscious, the archetype of forming society. The persona is a prime example of this. Every individual has the persona, which functions when interacting with others in society since birth. So you see, the persona is an archetype that based on the premise that the human mind is collective. It might be getting technical, but due to this property, the persona is often known as a social archetype. Personas and the young. Now, when I say humans have an innate ability to connect with others, it makes the persona sound epic, but on the other hand, this presents a problem to people, especially you young ones. We're able to smoothly engage in society by using the power of our personas to become someone else. But that also means that society doesn't necessarily need you, so long as there is someone to fill the role you play. The persona, then, is the denial of the will to live as your true self. It teaches you how to become someone else that isn't you, that you can survive in society. The persona acts as a mediator between your inner self and the outside world. When young people first enter society, many of them ask themselves, what does it mean to be me? Here's where the ego and the persona act in opposition of each other. Alright, keeping quiet, eh? Are you listening or just off in La La Land? This clash between the two happens within your psyche and shapes your life. Let me give you an example so you might understand this a little better. How to live with your persona. Say a person wants to contribute to society and lives a life with the persona as an unselfish person. For example, a policeman or a teacher. That's easy enough to imagine, right? That person using the mediator knows that his persona started living a reasonable life, making compromises with society. I'm a teacher, so I should live like this. That man's a police officer, so he's this type of person. If you know a person's role, it makes interacting with him go more smoothly. But yeah, that actually is the case. In this way, your persona helps support your social life by making it easier for others to relate to you. Personas can harm you, but persona seems useful enough. But in that usefulness lies several traps. Donning the mask of the persona also means the suppression of one's own ego. If the mask does not fit you, your mind will weaken. It can have detrimental effects on your health. Wearing a mask that doesn't fit becomes a burden on you. Also, spending too much time in your role can cause you to lose sight of your true self. For example, as our subject dons the mask of a teacher, he begins to act as one outside of school, and even at home. This becomes an instant of a person who has been taken over by his persona. So while the persona is useful in life, there's the danger of it weakening your mind or overtaking it altogether. Master your persona. It's said that the ideal relationship between ego and persona is one where the ego controls the persona. Having multiple personas and using them masterfully leads to a rich life. You should all begin seeking out new personas to take on and live your lives with many choices. Super interesting. Now then, it looks like our time is up. I guess I should remove my mask as a lecturer as well. And that's it for today. Okay, very, very interesting. I also kept that in mind whenever I would interact with people, put on a different persona as well. But not the case when I'm doing Let's Plays with you guys. What you're seeing through the camera and what you see me is actually my real person. I do not put a persona for anyone else. I try to be entertaining, but I fail miserably, unfortunately, so there's a reason why people sometimes tell me to get yourself a persona to be more entertaining, but like I said, I can't really do that. So truth about complexes. 7 of 10 lectures explain the basics of Jungian psychology. Alright, let's do this.
MR.EDOGAWA'S TV class.
Lesson 7. Alright, what do you got to say this time? Alright, for better or for worse, it's the 7th lecture, The Truth About Complexes. Now let's begin the lesson. Rakabustira, kabustira, bustira, tira, ra, ah. These Jungian psychology lectures have been centered on the unconscious. Today, let me introduce you to an important word that relates to the unconscious. Coined by Jung himself, it is now a widely used term, complex. Complex, the mechanism of the mind. Generally, when we say complex by itself in everyday conversation, refers to an inferiority complex. Psychological definition is slightly different. In psychology, a complex is a power that prevents the conscious from functioning properly. It's not a feeling of unworthiness, but the power that bends the mind in order to make you feel that way in the first place. That is the complex. I will give you a more concrete explanation, but first, let me ask you a question. I've taught you that the human mind is split into the conscious and unconscious. Now then, where do you think a complex lies? Conscious? Whoops, that answer is wrong. The conscious is where reason, the power to think, works, but the complex is in the location that reason cannot reach. That's right, it's in the unconscious. This is why they can be so troublesome. Okay then, understood. How complexes are formed. Alright, consciousness, the stars in the complex system. So, how are these complexes living inside the unconscious formed? In most cases, it seems that they are caused by personal experience. Let me give you an example. Let's say a person has had a strict upbringing since youth. He's always been taught to be courteous and clean. Hates sloppiness and dirtiness to the point where he will faint if he so much as touches something dirty. And when the level of dirtiness is still within a normal person's tolerances, this person's mind simply cannot accept it. Why does he hate dirtiness so much to the point where it causes his mind to function improperly? It's thought that this is because his obsession with cleanliness has, over time, sunk into the unconscious and stayed there. His hatred for uncleanliness has moved from his conscious and from the complex lodged firmly in his unconscious. When this complex flows backwards back into the conscious, it causes the person to have abnormal reactions. The individual unconscious and complexes. I just gave you an example of how a complex forms in the unconscious through an individual's experience. This unconscious, in more specific Jungian terms, points to the personal unconscious. Complexes are formed of the personal unconscious, which is a subset of an individual's unconscious. There are other processes that form complexes, but for now just remember this. How to deal with complexes. Now then, all people carry at least one complex, be it large or small. The problem arises when one emerges and interferes with a person's social life. When a person's complex is stimulated, he or she behaves emotional, causing abnormal behavior. This gets worse, the person may not be able to maintain relationships with other people or suffer a breakdown. Alright, let me just blow my nose real quick. I'm sure you're all thinking, then we should be trying to find a way to get rid of complexes. But being in the unconscious, they are difficult to find, and once found, removing one is even harder. Then what do? Face our complexes? Face our complexes, huh? That is a very trying thing to do. And yet it is said that acknowledging the existence of a complex is the first step to treating it. Your opinion is correct. Here's one proposed method of facing a complex. Perhaps it isn't the complex making you lopsided, but your own ego that's making your mind imbalanced. In other words, it has a positive view of the complex that one forms in order to balance out your already lopsided mind. According to this view, when you find your complex, it is your chance to become a better person. Some of you may think that you've heard this before, and to those people, I commend you. This has many similarities to what I talked about during the lecture on the shadow archetype. In that lesson, I told you about acknowledging one's own shadow. The hidden things in your mind are not pure evil. It is important to have a good look at them. Ooh, and that's the end of this lecture. Don't fear your complexes. Now then, it looks like our time is up. Basically, we all have the means in our minds to cope with complexes. If anyone's worried about this lecture, there's no need for pessimism. Just face your own mind. And that's it for today. So complexes is like inferiority complex, mother complex, father complex, Oedipus complex even. They all can be overcome as long as you acknowledge that they are there. If you go right ahead with those complexes and don't ascertain that they are in your mind at all, you're kind of in trouble and you might end up as a messed up person in the end. Alright, 3 more lectures to go and we'll be done with this. Alright, what's next? These are very interesting lectures, must say.
MR.EDOGAWA'S TV classroom.
Almost done. Before you know it, here's the 8th installment, Psychological Types for Beginners. I'll make sure to ask questions that don't violate any doctor-patient confidentiality laws. Now let's begin the class. Tenkiru, Tsuchikiru, Hapokiru. I know the lesson's just beginning, but it's time for a question. Use the buttons in front of you to answer. Right now, what do you think you need to do with regards to your life? Learn more about myself? Oh, I see. Next, we have another question. Please use your imagination. Say you're going to see an art unveiling at an exhibit of incredible paintings. This particular painting is one that no one has seen yet. The moment you see this painting, which of these do you think your mind is going to do first? Alright, decide whether I like or dislike it, figure out what it means, try to see what it looks like, get inspiration from it. Usually when I see art pieces, I just, for example on DeviantArt, I usually fade them or anything, but I don't try to find meanings in it or something, and I sometimes tend to get inspiration from it, so there are kind of 2 answers that are viable here. Decide whether I like it or dislike it. Alright, that's all I need. We're done with the questions. Still, it's hard to come up with gimmicks on such a low budget. Still, that's the fate of public access TV. I'm sure some of you have figured it out by now, but I ask those questions to find out what type of mind you have. It's like those commonly found personality tests. In fact, you could say this method of categorizing people's minds itself was made known by Jung. He's the original personality tester. Yeah, it makes sense considering what we heard of so far. So today's lesson is the psychological types Jung used to categorize people. Psychological types categorized by 2 sections. He thought that 2 aspects were useful in categorizing the mind. The first is the direction the mind's energy faces, and the other is the way the mind functions. It may sound a bit confusing, so allow me to expound upon both of them. Oh, you want to know the results of the personality test I gave you? I've forgotten about them, but let's wait until after the lesson. Extroversion and introversion. Oh, I know these. The first one about the direction of the mind's energy. People's interests either face outward or inward. Are you more inclined to be interested in the outside world, or do you tend to think it internally? That's the difference. Have you ever heard of the term extroverted and introverted? Yep, heard them a lot. It comes from Jung's theories about personalities. An extrovert likes to talk to people and strives to learn about the latest fads. Conversely, introverts like time by themselves and approach new ideas with caution. I'm kind of a mixture of both. I'm more like a loner myself, but I'm not too shy away from interacting with people, so slightly extroverted, majorly introverted, so to speak. The 4 psychological functions. The second subject used to categorize the mind is the way the mind functions. This basically is, what will a person's mind do when interacting with something? Jung split the results into 4 basic categories. These are the psychological functions. It is impossible to explain all of these in this lesson, but I'll give it a try. In technical terms, the 4 are feeling, thinking, sensation, and intuition. To simplify them, when a person sees something, deciding whether he hates or likes it is feeling. Trying to reason about it is thinking. Trying to perceive it through shape and color is sensation. And connecting it to their unconscious thoughts is intuition. Still too difficult, eh? Let me give you an example. Say for the moment I have a piece of bread. I like it, I want one, would be feeling. Can I eat it, would be thinking. Oh shit, I skipped. Sorry about that. That's how the 4 psychological functions work. Alright, so sensation thinking is extroversion. So you see, extroversion, introversion, and 4 psychological functions, these aspects help categorize your mind. 2 times 4, that means there are 8 types in total. Now, from the questions that I asked you at the start of this lesson, you're an introverted feeling type. Oh yeah, definitely. Many men of religions are said to be this personality type. I'm not religious myself, so you're kind of off the mark. As a warning, this is just a general tendency and does not explain the person in detail. This could be a good first step in analyzing the mind. However, it's pointless to rely on this as a guide and completely ignore the complexity of the human mind. I don't want you to get the wrong idea about these tests. Mind compensates itself. With this type theory, Jung didn't want to merely split the mind into categories, but showcase its special properties. Specifically speaking, that the conscious and unconscious regulate each other through a method called compensation. The 8 types are based on the conscious of that person. That doesn't mean that a person can also have extroverted, introverted properties or other psychological functions. It still exists in the unconscious and just don't show up on the surface as much. For example, have you ever agreed with someone with the personality type that is opposite to yours? This is because the other traits that lie below your conscious are working to help you understand. Using another power outside your personality, literally unwittingly. The conscious and unconscious compensate for one another. I'll mention this again, so be sure to remember it. But still, the human personality is an interesting subject. We tend to judge people based on the aspect of personalities that we see, but Jung tells us that doing this is bad. If you truly study the mind, it makes you a more benevolent person, like me. And that's the end of this lecture, I guess. Now then, it looks like it's time. That's it for today. Alright, very interesting. So, extroverted is more like trying to feel or whatnot, but introverted is more like trying to feel and think about it. Or who knows, I might have forgotten about it already, but it's nevertheless pretty interesting. 2 more lectures to go, so bear with me at least. Interpreting dreams. Alright, let's see what this is all about. Alright.
MR.EDOGAWA'S TV class.
Lesson 9. Alright, we're skipping the intro. We're in the 9th installment coming up on the home stretch. This time we're discussing interpreting dreams. Let's begin the lecture. Dein Name ist Rumpelstiltskin. My name is Rumpelstiltskin, if I understood that correctly. Jung, dream interpreting. So far we discussed archetypes and psychological types, things Jung was famous for. This time, let's learn about another distinctive feature of Jungian psychology, dream analysis. As the name implies, dream analysis is the study of the psychological meanings behind dreams. This commonly used as a synonym for Jungian psychology as a whole. Of course, Jung himself used dream analysis to treat his patients. The mysticality and flamboyancy of that idea must make it popular. It's true that dreams are probably the most incomprehensible phenomenon of the human mind. You've already heard me mention dreams before in my previous lectures, right? I said that dreams are proof of the existence of the unconscious. Dreams of the unconscious are very closely related. This will be the starting point of today's lecture. Freud's dream theory. The first person to point out the connection between dreams and the unconscious was Freud, Jung's mentor. You remember him, right? Yes, that Freud. Freud studied dreams and noticed that there were a lot of elements that fulfilled the dreamer's desires. He thought that dreams were phenomena where the desires of the unconscious relapse into the conscious during sleep. To be blunt, you see dreams in order to feel good. I believe Freud's theory is quite convincing, but Jung's view varies a bit from it. Jung's mechanism of dreams. Jung heard about dreams from his patients, as well as recorded and studied his own dreams in hopes of learning their cause. The core of dreams is basic property of the mind's functions, something Jung himself theorized. I talked about this with the personality types. Do you remember that? What Jung saw as the mechanism behind dreams is the mind's tendency to compensate. In other words, he believed that dreams occur due to the power of conscious and the unconscious compensating for each other. I feel like I've been repeating myself, but just one more time. Within the mind, the conscious and the unconscious compensate for each other's imbalances. They try to fix erroneous and incomplete parts of each other. And one such method of compensation is through dreams. Compensates errors in incomplete parts. Conscious dreams of the unconscious. Putting into graphics, the unconscious is sending dreams to support the conscious. Just remember it like that. It's trying to fix erroneous and incomplete parts of the conscious. Dreams of the unconscious is quip to the conscious. Maybe that's being too light on the subject. At any rate, just remember that dreams happen to compensate for erroneous and incomplete parts of the conscious. Various types of dreams. It's just a basic explanation of dreams. There's a lot more variety when you go into details. I'm going to be a little bold and try using more technical terms to describe what I mean here. The dreams that are based on things that you're aware of and help you think about them are called compensatory. Conversely, non-compensatory dreams are the ones that can help you sort out potential problems from external sources. Oh, again, my nose is running. Sorry about that. Jesus. Non-compensatory dreams don't reflect the conscious mind, but can still be helpful in their own way. Those are the complete dreams, the dreams that your unconscious delivers to the conscious. There are also incomplete versions that get shown to the conscious as well. There are reiterative dreams, which show events from real life. It's pretty much your memory replaying itself. Physiological dreams are dreams you have because of physical influences on your body while you're sleeping. So to recap, compensatory and non-compensatory dreams along with reiterative and physiological dreams, you don't need to remember all that in detail. Just remember that there are several types and levels of dreams. You forgot one. Twitch. I see your students are getting better. I didn't expect this comment from any of you. I was going to bring this up, but now that it looks like I don't have a choice. So prepare yourselves and listen up. Way too special a dream. Prophetic dreams. Oh, I remember having those a lot, actually. Well, sometimes, like, throughout my life, like, I'll have a dream of something and it'll happen in real life. Jung did describe a very special type of dream. Prophetic dreams. The other types have had explanations that made sense, although it may take some effort to figure them out. But it's hard to give a reasonable explanation for prophetic dreams. Prophetic dreams predict the future, but there is no explanation given as to how anyone can predict events that they have no way of possibly knowing. Some trick and an erroneous report, even after going through these, Jung was left with the fact that they do exist. However, instead of denying or ignoring that type of dream, he tried to expound upon it. In the process, he began to look for the existence of telepathic power, but that's for another time. So you see, there are some dreams that not even Jung was able to explain. Jung's achievements span all sorts of places, so it's easy to go off track. Let's get back to dream analysis. Now, I'm sure that after hearing all this, some of you out there want to start analyzing your own dreams. I don't blame you. Is it really possible? Let's say you had a certain dream and continue on from there. For this example, you had a dream in which your father turned into a lizard man, and at the dinner table, old lizard dad is sitting there like normal, talking about the next vacation he'll take. After seeing this powerful image, you feel that this dream has to mean something and search for an answer. So you check books and search the web for things about lizards and dreams, looking for template interpretations. But Jung warned that this interpretation is only a one-sided analysis. After all, lizards might hold some deep personal meaning to you that isn't the same as other people's. So continuing on with lizard dream. Are lizards too creepy? Should I change Lizard Dad to a Marshmallow Man for this example? Let's stay with Lizard Dad. That lizard might be a representation formed by the unconscious mind to express something creepy, an enemy, but might be something other than the common image. Maybe you like lizards, or the first lizards you saw impressed you. In other words, your personal lizard may not be the lizard that other people perceive in their unconscious. So, is the thing you see in your dream a symbol, or are you dreaming about the thing itself? Without figuring out the difference, you'll have a hard time figuring out what your dreams are trying to say. As to say, your unconscious is calling out to you, but you either aren't hearing it or are taking it the wrong way. Interpreting dreams association. You can propose the method to solve this problem. The method is association. In this method, you ask the individual to expand on the personal experiences they have with the images and dreams. In regards to the lizard, what do you think when you hear the word this lizard? What do you associate the word with? What did it look like? What do you remember about it? Basically, you talk with the person and expand on the meaning of the dream, leading to deeper interpretation. Interpreting dreams, amplification. You can also propose another method, noting that dreams are stories created by the unconscious. Just as dreams are stories created by the unconscious for the individual, you took notice that there were stories created by the unconscious for the collective. Those stories are ancient mythology. You advocated the method of comparing dreams to myths. This is known as amplification. If a dream in question is hard to interpret by personal experience, looking at similar myths may lend a hint about its meaning. Not only myths, but fairy tales and the like are also used. Using these past examples and archives, you would supplement the dreams and interpret them. Leave it to the experts. Accurate dream interpretation using both association and amplification is very difficult. Long conversations and personal counseling are necessary, and the analyst must be proficient. I must say that dream interpretation is not an easy task. Book interpretations may be fun, but they lack credibility. While it is important to lend your ear to the unconscious, being tied down by an inexperienced interpretation would actually make the dream harmful. That's the end of another lecture. Now then, looks like it's time, and that's it for today. Alright then. Very, very interesting. So the dreams are the extension of your unconscious, and the unconscious uses the dream to compensate for your conscious in order to help your mind function better, if that makes sense. Alright, last lecture. Hope you guys are ready.
MR.EDOGAWA'S TV class.
Alright. The final lesson, our grand finale, deeper into Jungian psychology. Is this ever going to end? It's hard to say, isn't it? Now then, let's begin the lecture. Ventla, Space Cadets. Jungian psychology once more. Looking back, the unconscious, the collective unconscious, the shadow and persona archetypes, complexes, personality types, and dream interpretation, I've managed to introduce the main points of Jungian psychology to you. If you're a high school student, it might have been a bit hard for you. But you did well to come this far. Though I think we can ease off on the lectures. Some of you might want to go even farther, get promoted, molt. For those people, I'll be glad to show you the next step. So today we'll talk about the power that helped Jung formulate his superhuman-like theories. His interest in the mystical, what you would call the occult. Bloodline of mediums. From start to finish, his life had always been influenced by occult-like things. That was his fate. It was in his DNA. He was born in the Switzerland countryside to a family that was close to spirits. To be more specific, his father was a pastor. His mother was from a bloodline that can sense spirits. I think it's safe to say that this environment helped him foster an interest in religion and the spiritual. In fact, he did experience something psychologically important. For instance, when he was 3 or 4 years old, quite young, he had a dream he was unable to forget. It was a terrifying dream. In the throne room past an underground tunnel, he saw a giant pillar of flesh known as the Man-Eater. That dream may have been the starting point of his passion towards dream interpretation. On top of that, Jung took notice of another personality within himself at an early age. This other personality was an old, dignified man who compensated for his feelings of inferiority as a boy. Sounds a lot like one of the archetypes he later proposed, the wise old man, doesn't it? Psychic phenomena. It can be said for sure that Jung's blood and upbringing caused this. Throughout his life, he had multiple experiences with poltergeist phenomena. Some cases include his family oak table splitting in two and a steel bread knife shattering. Jung was also interested in the paranormal from a young age. He participated in a gathering to summon the spirits of the dead, held by a cousin who was a medium. It really shows how interested Jung was about the occult. Studying the occult. When Jung began walking the path of psychiatry, he analyzed the things that occurred at the summoning. While Jung thought there was a psychological meaning, Freud warned against getting too deep into the occult. One of the factors in the deterioration of their relationship was a difference in viewpoints regarding the occult. Well, they did also disagree on some theories in psychoanalysis and had some personal incidents, but around the time Jung parted ways from Freud, he had a certain health problem. He himself became mentally ill. Oh boy, period of mental illness. His mind had become so ill he would see visions and delusions. Even as he suffered his illness, he drew upon his experience as a psychiatrist and turned to a subject of study. So what kind of visions did he see? Let me introduce one of them. There was a time when he saw visions of Europe ending with a giant flood. A few months later, the First World War broke out. His visions became a reality. It seems like a prophetic dream, doesn't it? Jung interpreted this occurrence as the result of the unconscious sensing the oncoming danger of the war. During this time, he also came across ghosts. According to him, after a group of ghosts burst into his house, he then spent 3 days writing an essay. In a sense, he acknowledged the existence of ghosts. But he saw those ghosts as projections of his unconscious. Psychiatrist's bizarre experience. Treating people as a psychiatrist, sometimes he came to experiences that surpassed rational thought. Jung was interested in things like that as well. I'll relate a well-known anecdote about Jung as an example. This happened when he was talking with a female patient, interpreting her dreams. She was talking about a golden scarab in a dream. In that moment, an actual beetle flew into the room. When this occurred, her mind was altered, and so was the treatment. Jung took notice of this mechanism of coincidence. This meaningful coincidence leads to synchronicity and constellation. Jung intertwined these with the archetypes and theorized about well, we're skipping that, maybe some other time. Jung eastward. Jung was also interested in Eastern religion and ideology, which was a rare study at the time. Hindu philosophy, Zen ideology, Chinese fortune-telling, alchemy. His inspirations came from everywhere. Take the mandala, for example. That's a type of art in the Buddhist and Hindu religions, usually with many gods or Buddhas drawn on them. He realized that there was a similarity between the structure of that art and the treatment he underwent during his illness. Jung knew from experience that you can see the state of his mind through painting a circle. He found a common point between drawing a circle and mandalas. It seemed he tried expanding his knowledge of relations that science couldn't explain by reading the I Ching, a Chinese system. Jung's ideas of synchronicity and meaningful coincidences were influenced by the I Ching. Alchemy's effect on Jungian psychology. Now then, when talking about Jung's achievements and the occult, you cannot mention alchemy. Alchemy is a magical technology that people dreamed of long ago, famously to turn lead into gold. Jung interpreted the principle of the process as a representation of individuation. The influence of alchemy on Jung is obvious, and he has left several works on alchemy. He really took interest in the alchemic concept of the union of opposites. Think of opposite properties eventually becoming one complete object. That idea became one of Jungian psychology's roots. Going this far in, you almost feel that all this talk of his occult study is rather mild. Oh, so Jung branched out into a lot of things: collective unconscious, synchronicity, constellation, UFOs, mandala, religion, myth, I Ching, alchemy, dream interpretation, psychiatry, psychological types, archetypes, complexes. Jung built up his original knowledge not only through psychiatric study, but by digging deep into the occult. He sure had a lot of energy. Not only did he take on ancient things like mythology, but he even integrated new mysteries into his studies. Modern mysteries such as UFOs. Their very existence is doubtful, but Jung tried to explain the existence of UFOs. The results were, well, I'll make this short. UFOs are icons of postmodern anxiety coming from the collective unconscious. UFOs are the modern-day mandala, to sum it up. Perhaps you'll be able to understand what that means with the knowledge you've gained from these lessons. To illustrate how deeply Jung delved into the experience of ancient ideology and theology, surpassing the borders of theology. In his later years, he attended Iranos, an intellectual exchange for all sorts of thinkers all across the world. He directly and continually exchanged ideas and opinions with some of the best scholars in a number of fields. Jung associated with a variety of famed minds, even outside of Iranos. The author Hesse, his psychist Pauli, and many big politicians were among his associates outside of his field. His achievements, influenced by a variety of people, have surpassed the borders of psychology and psychiatry. His work is not limited to psychiatrists. Philosophers, authors, and artists as well find inspiration in his works. He is one of the few psychologists that actually influence the way people think. And that is all the lectures, I guess. Final lecture was a lot to swallow, but if anything I said interests you, I encourage you to look it up. I'm sure something deep within your conscience will change or give you the opportunity to change. Oh, and because these lessons are all my own personal opinions, I add on a disclaimer that no effects are guaranteed. Until we meet again. Nachtri Hekunde Kachin Nevergachutin Zagesurklach Zunus. Whatever the hell that means. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for all of these lectures. There is like one more, but I don't think that's unlockable in any way. So, yeah, we basically find out like the roots of what the Persona series stand for and like what the unconscious, the Persona, and the shadows like mean like. Very interesting. You don't see like these type of unlockables like in any other game where it's like deeply informative and like gives you the deeper understanding of the themes in a game, but I can't help but appreciate it very much. So that's going to be the end of the first extras video. The next one is going to be the midnight quiz. I remember trying it like off screen a couple of times, and I think I lost the very first time I did it. I think there was only one midnight quiz, but it does show that there was like some other like tables there as well, so might unlock more after that, who knows. So without further ado, that's it for this video. Thank you all who watched, and hopefully I will see you all next time. Bye bye.